Jayson Stark. They're killing me. Let's bring him in. He's the man who covers baseball for The Athletic. He's in the Hall of Fame. He is Mr. Baseball, and he's going to explain this melting. Jayson Stark, brought to us by DraftKings. Jason, I can't explain it, so I'll let you do it.
Mike, people don't seem too upbeat around here today.
No.
I don't know. Just like one of my theories is all Phillies seasons have one thing in common. They just last a little too long. Other than 2008 and 1980, they all last too long, and especially this one, right?
Boy, these Septembers are just hard to take.
God.
And in conjunction with the Eagles, people are just miserable, and they lose last night again. And working, it's almost like a passion play of some sort. Like there's some kind of script. It's a Shakespearean tragedy. A Cuban defector comes up and bangs a home run to win the game.
Yeah, it's part of the experience of being a Philadelphian. I don't know why people in our town have to be put through this, but what they lived through yesterday, I don't know what you think. That felt like one of the all-time Philadelphia sports debacle. Like just one of those days we'll look back on for a long time. This is as bad as it can get. You think about all that went into it, right? You have Nola lined up against a guy with a 7 ERA. And also, by the way, the worst strikeout rate of any starter in the big leagues, and they lose. Like the day before, you had Zach Wheeler lined up against another guy with a 7 ERA and lose that game. And then the way the game ends last night, wow. Just a disaster.
It is just unbelievable. And now, listen, they still have a chance. Things have to go right. They have to sweep. They have to get help. The whole thing. They may be able to sneak in. But the way this has gone, the front office has just been a colossal failure on things they've tried to do. Now, I know guys are hurt right now, but those trades that they tried to improve their bullpen have failed. And it's about time that this front office gets evaluated. Do you agree? Harshly by the owner.
I don't know how you cannot evaluate it. If you really take in what's happened, I do understand that the last 2 weeks and the injuries they've dealt with the level of player who's had to deal with them, like that's rough. That's tough for any team to deal with. But I don't know how you can escape the reality that the number one culprit in all of this is roster construction. Having no outfield depth, so you can't cover an injury to Kyle Garlick, not to mention Harper, Jay Bruce, McCutcheon. Not sure how that happens. And then having no pitcher you can call up to even start a game through all these doubleheaders. Calling up one reliever after another. And the only guy who looks like he belongs in the big leagues has been Jojo Romero. And this is on a team that's used 28 pitchers. And, I keep coming back to the same thing in my head. It's hard. It's a weird season. But remember, you have a 60-player pool, which means you have more players actually at the alternate site than on your big league team. So the lack of depth and the lack of options here has just been hard to believe.
Yeah, the axe has to fall. I mean, they knew the axe had to fall in Kepler last year. The owner knows the axe has to fall in this regime now. They just failed. They had a chance to do it. Maybe it was novel when they hired him, but it didn't work. The McPhail-Clintack experiment did not work. And so I expect that will change in the offseason, barring a miracle that they get into the playoffs and they actually do something here.
Well, it's hard to know exactly what John Middleton's thinking, but I do think that recent history has shown he's very aware of what the fan base thinks, of what people like us think. He's not just in his bubble. He's very conscious of perception in the town. So maybe that's a factor. Maybe it's not. You've alluded a couple of times to the idea that they still could sneak in.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't see it now. Their playoff odds on Fangraphs have gone from 85% to 33% just since Sunday. And one of the big reasons is, I actually said this to you last week, they're going to win every tiebreaker because they have this great division record, and that's the tiebreaker. And then they go out and lose 5 in a row to the Mets and Nationals. So now they lose almost every tiebreaker, and here's what that means. I think 30-30 doesn't get you in anymore. So they have to go 4-0, which means they have to sweep the Rays at home. And is that possible? Mike, you know how many series the Rays have lost at home this season? You want to guess?
None?
None. Not one.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, listen, it's a pipe dream. So, but mathematically, I guess they're still in it. So, the manager has kind of escaped criticism all year, and I can see why. But I'm just curious to know what you saw and what others may have said about his bullpen moves last night, where he, looking at the charts, it says Morgan does pretty well against Michael A. Taylor, but he went conventional and he went righty on righty, and it backfired.
He had a reasonable answer for that. He's in a bullpen game. He is trapped in these rules now that say every reliever has to face 3 hitters. And so when he explained it afterward, that was clearly what he meant, that he needed to match up Jojo Romero with Soto, and that's what that dictated when Phelps came in. But I think that's obviously a situation where if he had it back, he wouldn't have done what he did because it didn't work out. It was a mess. It was a game-changing, as it turned out, game-losing mess.
Last question, Real Muto. A very peculiar answer was given by Clintac a few days ago. He said, "Well, we got basically." He basically said, "Well, we got him for 2 years of control," and that doesn't sit well with fans who thought they were going to actually lock him up. Who knows what this regime is going to, whether they're going to survive? But where do you think the JT Real Muto thing goes?
Well, look, a lot's been made of that answer. Probably more has been made of it than it actually means. To a great extent, that really is just the way that Matt answers questions like that. But all right, a couple things here. First, the decision on whether JT stays here, signs here, that's going to be a John Middleton decision, right? That's not going to be a Matt Clintac decision. Mm-hmm. But some of the decisions along the way have been Matt Clintac decisions. And that is the problem, right? Because, John Middleton was telling people after they made the trade that the number one priority was to get this guy signed. Number one. And now it's almost 2 years later and still hasn't happened. He never jumped in to make it happen, and I think that's because he left that, for the most part, up to Andy MacPhail and Matt Clintac. And I think one of the most fateful decisions, when we look back on it, was taking this guy to arbitration last winter. Why? Right? I know he has said all the right things, right? I know that JT has said that doesn't mean anything. Here's a little factoid to keep in mind. In the last 30 years, there has not been a single player who was in his final year of arbitration, went to a hearing, lost that hearing, and then re-signed with that team. Not one. So this guy's going to test the market, and a lot of forces outside of John Middleton's control and the front office's control will be in play when that happens. They had to head that off. They did not. Well,
that's really interesting, and we have to move on here. But quickly, if John Middleton made that the number one priority, then I hear his excuse that he was going to leave it up to Clintac. He could have come in at any point. If he saw it was slogging along, he could have pushed the button on it. So I'm not going to let him off the hook for that.
Right. The next time he speaks publicly, that's a question that we're going to have to ask him. No doubt.
All right. Jason, great stuff. Always a pleasure. We'll talk to you up the road.
Hang in there, Mike.
All right,
Yeah.
Jayson Stark, brought to us by DraftKings.
Mike Missanelli, afternoons from 2 to 6 on 97.5 The Fanatic, Philadelphia.